Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're going to give folks just a couple of minutes here to jump on the call. You are on NCST's Community Impact Briefing for the month of June. Welcome, and we'll talk to you in a minute. If you're just jumping on, I'm going to give folks just another minute or so. I see folks are still joining the call, and I want to give them an opportunity. So welcome, and thanks for your patience. All right, we're about 2 minutes after the bottom of the hour. We'll go ahead and get started. I still see a couple folks joining, but want to be respectful of everyone's time. Hello and welcome to NCST's June Community Impact Briefing. My name is Erin Persons on behalf of my colleagues at NCST. We're thrilled to have you here for another month's presentation. We're excited about the topic today and look forward to sharing more with you. Just as a reminder, everyone is on mute. There will be an opportunity after the presentation today for Q&A. We will also have our typical policy briefing. David Sanchez will be providing that after our speaker. So we hope you'll stick around with us after the presentation. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Raquel Reddy. Just as a reminder, if you do have comments during the presentation that's coming up, you can either use the chat feature or the Q&A, and we will definitely facilitate all of the questions that you might have about this topic after Ahmad's presentation has completed. Raquel?
Thanks, Erin, and welcome to everyone today. It's a great day in the homeownership month of June to be talking about our topic today. And so I'd love to present, our presenter today is going to be Ahmad Abu-Khalaf. He's a senior research analyst on Enterprise's policy development and research team. He conducts research and analysis of affordable housing and community development policy, focusing on strategies for expanding the supply of affordable homes and bending the cost curve. Ahmad holds a master's degree in urban planning from the University of Arizona, Tucson. So welcome, Ahmad. We are so happy to have you here. And I think we're going to get your presentation up here in just a second. And I'll give you the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today. I'm excited to be on this call. And this presentation will explore how we can use ADU development to accomplish a range of housing policy goals. Next slide, please. Just to be on the same page, when it comes to ADU, the definition of ADU, we usually use a range of terms in the housing industry like casitas, backyard homes, mother-in-law suites. It usually, those terms describe an ADU dwelling unit that is smaller in size, that is located on a parcel that also includes a larger primary unit. That is typically a single family home. An ADU can have different forms. It could be a basement unit, a self-contained detached backyard home. It could be a unit that is attached to the primary dwelling. So there could be different forms for the ADU, but it's usually a smaller in size unit that is located on a parcel that includes a larger primary unit. When we discuss ADU development in the scheme of housing production, we usually discuss it as a housing production strategy that can add to the existing density, and it's at the lower end of gentle density. So basically, we add to the density of predominantly single-family zoned areas or single-family zoned areas, and add smaller units on parcels that are developed with single-family homes. Next slide, please. We usually discuss ADU development as a housing strategy that would help increase the supply of affordable housing in expensive, predominantly single-family zoned areas. But that's not the only goal that we can accomplish by using ADU production. We can add ADUs to more affordable areas that are predominantly single-family zoned to allow low-income households who cannot afford existing single-family homes, whether to rent them or to purchase those houses, to move into these areas and access more affordable ADUs that could be rented if the existing zoning allows for that, or in some situations could be purchased under the condominium ownership structure, where the site is subdivided into multiple sites, and then the owner of the ADU would also own the underlying portion of the parcel that the ADU is placed on the top of that. And we have seen some recent examples, like recent example from the city of Austin, where they tried using this model to incentivize folks who cannot own single-family homes to tap into homeownership by purchasing ADUs through the condominium ownership model. Next slide, please. And then, of course, we can use ADU development to create multi-generational housing, or allow empty nesters and senior homeowners who would like to do age in place to stay at their homes or downsize and move into an ADU, and then allow a relative to live in the primary unit, or they could also move into the ADU to downsize while renting out the primary dwelling and generate additional income that would allow them to downsize while also stay in their place and not move to a different neighborhood. And when we discuss multi-generational housing, there are certain markets with high demand for this type of housing, where extended families or larger families would like to live on the same parcel. So thinking about how we can use ADUs for this type of housing, especially in neighborhoods with high demand for multi-generational housing, and also thinking about how ADUs that are more affordable than single-family homes or duplexes by design, since they are smaller in size and have a fair market value that is typically lower than the market value of a single-family home or duplex, can allow for affordable opportunities for folks looking for multi-generational housing types. Next slide, please. And then we can also think about how we can help lower and moderate income households tap into new strategy to generate additional income by renting out their ADUs when the land use and zoning requirements allow for that. So you would help those homeowners create ADUs or just legalize existing structures and use them as ADUs, and then rent them out to tenants who are interested in living in a smaller unit that is more affordable by design. And this way they can generate additional income. We also have been thinking about how this strategy, the ADU production strategy for lower and moderate income households, can help them on the long term tap into a source of generational wealth. This, of course, relies on the appraisal, the home appraisal value, and if the total amount of the appraised value post the ADU addition is actually higher than the previous appraised amount. And this basically relies on market dynamics and how the appraisals account the ADU addition and the generated income through renting it out is counted. But potentially, if it increases the overall property value, then it would allow those households to tap into a source of generational wealth building. Next slide, please. When we did research that led to the release of a white paper, we were thinking about the challenges that we need to overcome to allow homeowners who are interested in pursuing ADU development to actually create ADUs on their parcels. And we did a survey with a couple of stakeholders or developers, architects, city planners, and they told us that the success of the ADU development as a housing production strategy relies heavily on the appetite of existing homeowners, because this is where most of the work happens. We haven't seen a lot of developers who create new construction, single family development with already added ADUs. So we would have to rely on the homeowners' appetite and interest in ADU production. So since it's a homeowner initiated process, we're trying to think about what kind of challenges homeowners who are interested in pursuing ADUs have been facing. And one of the most prominent challenges is accessing financing to develop ADUs. And this challenge, of course, is more challenging and prominent among lower income and moderate income households who don't have the same access to either equity or debt. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the most prominent challenges to creating ADUs is through the interest of existing homeowners is accessing financing that is tailored for ADU production. There's a scarcity of lending products that are tailored for ADU production, which has been pushing homeowners to either rely on their savings, their own equity, or tapping into their home equity to access lending products like a revolving line of credit or a home equity line of credit. The problem is for lower and moderate income households, that is not always feasible or possible. Some homeowners don't have sufficient equity to use it. Some homeowners don't even qualify for those lending products that rely on their existing home equity. We've also heard that some homeowners are actually afraid or hesitant to use those lending products because when they tap into their home equity and then they cannot, for some reason or another, they cannot pay back that loan, they might lose their home equity as a collateral. So we heard a lot of concerns and issues with using those lending products that rely on tapping into home equity. And moving forward, we have been thinking about what we can do to overcome those challenges, which will be discussed in the next slide. Next slide, please. So we have been thinking about how government agencies that back mortgages and also private lenders who provide residential mortgages can look into creating lending products that are actually more tailored for financing ADU production, and without having a specific vision for what those lending products would look like, there could be some agreed upon principles or best practices for creating and developing those lending products. So we have to think about how those lending products can allow low and moderate income homeowners to finance and develop ADUs on their topics, since we talked about some strategies like attaining additional income through renting out the ADUs and attaining a source of generational wealth building that would benefit those homeowners, the low and moderate income homeowners. So we should think about lending products that are tailored for those homeowners. We also have to think about the loan terms, the interest rates. If we want to incentivize homeowners to create ADUs, there should be favorable terms and interest rates. And we also have to think about the repayment or the payment time schedule. Do we want to create a lending product that would only require the borrower to pay the interest payment over the first year to 2 years, and then once they can finish the construction of the ADU and rent it out, we would ask them to start paying the interest and the principal payments. So this is one way about thinking how we can help lower and moderate income homeowners who are interested in renting out their ADUs tap into financing a product that is more tailored for them and suitable for them. And also we have been thinking about some challenges, like when lenders don't include the projected rental income from the ADU in the debt to income calculations that might impact the eligibility of borrowers and eventually might not let them be eligible for those lending products, or when sometimes it's not, the projected rental income is not included in the loan to value calculations, then they end up accessing less debt, and that might impact the kind of financing they need to create ADUs on their parcels. And we just have been thinking overall about what kind of underwriting process can be tailored for the population of in need of ADU financing. And then we have been thinking about what kind of also private and philanthropic sources can be used to support low and moderate income homeowners who are interested in creating ADUs on their parcels, but they don't have sufficient funds, or they cannot tap into financing resources for creating ADUs. So this is basically a number of points that we would have to think about to overcome challenges to financing ADU production. Next slide, please. We also have been thinking about how the creation of an ADU basically creates a unit that is more affordable by design, since it's smaller than the single family home. Then the market value typically should be lower than the market value of the single family home. But then when you think about ADUs as a deeply affordable unit, or if we want it to serve as affordable housing, for example, if the market value for the ADU is affordable for a household earning 80% of the area median income, but you want it to be affordable to households earning less than 50% of the area median income, then some form of subsidy is needed to attain those deeper affordability targets. And we have seen a range of public and private initiatives that provide financing and support to lower and moderate income homeowners who are interested in creating ADUs and renting them out, but they don't have sufficient equity or debt to do that. And then in return, they would ask those homeowners to rent those ADUs as affordable units with specific affordability terms. And one of the concerns that has been raised is that when existing homeowners create ADUs and then rent them out, they become homeowners, they become landlords overnight, and that will not necessarily mean that they will always feel like they are facing a lot of challenges, but sometimes they might face some challenges and feel that they're not ready to become landlords overnight. And this might require some technical assistance or financial assistance to enable them to be successful landlords, to enable them to handle any maintenance costs or responsibilities and issues that they may not be ready to deal with otherwise. Next slide, please. So to wrap it up, as I mentioned before, ADU production can be used to attain a range of housing policy goals depending on the kind of desired goals and also the market needs and local characteristics. However, there are challenges. There are still some persistent challenges to creating ADUs, and one of the most prominent challenges is financing ADUs, especially for lower and moderate income households. And this requires coming up with innovative solutions to help homeowners, especially lower and moderate income homeowners who are interested in creating ADUs on their land and eventually renting them out or creating some housing options that otherwise would not be available in that specific market. And we just have to think about how we can come with innovative strategies to overcome those financing challenges. And if you're interested in reading more about our research, please visit the link that appears on that slide. And if you're interested in chatting more about this research work, please feel free to reach out to me on the email address that appears on the slide. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Ahmad. Really great information. And what I found really interesting was, I'm not sure if folks had been on a previous call, but utilizing shipping containers and other things as innovative opportunities for those ADUs just seems to tie everything together. I thought that was great. It does look like we've already got some questions, which is fantastic. Matthew, I'm going to go ahead and allow you to ask your question whenever you're ready. You'll just need to unmute yourself.
Hey, this is Matthew Ramadan. I work with the city of Minneapolis, and we do have ADU capacity in our city, so people can create ADUs, both attached and detached. There are some restrictions on size, however, when it's considered as an ADU. So in December of 2019, we changed our zoning so that all city of Minneapolis single-family zone lots can now have up to 3 units on them. So there are no size restrictions except for what, zoning setbacks would be needed. And I think that might be a way to help folks think about ADUs in a different context, as far as the zoning is concerned. The one question actually 2 questions I have, but it's really rolled into one. And that is, in your research, have you found any national lenders who are willing to provide financing for ADUs, particularly for homeowners who already have existing mortgages? Do they have to do it as, say, for instance, a refinance, or are there some standalone ADU financing opportunities out there models out there with some of these major national lenders?
Yeah, that's a good question. The research was released last year, so it might not be up to date now when it comes to lending products that are more recent than the ones that we looked at. What we found last year was mostly local initiatives that are interested in boosting ADU production within a certain jurisdiction. There were a couple in California, but I haven't seen any national lending product that is tailored for ADU production. Again, I'm not quite sure if it exists or not, but last year when we did our survey, we haven't found any information about a national lending product that is tailored for ADU production.
As a follow-up, if you don't mind, Aaron.
No, go ahead.
Sure.
You mentioned using container homes. We just started now in the city of Minneapolis allowing container. So we don't have any building code in place for the use of container homes. What we basically said is that the design must be signed off by a licensed engineer, structural engineer in the city, the state of Minnesota. And so our building basically said, if you guys say it's safe, because they say this is a metal box of unknown origin that you guys are saying is safe to live in, or in this case, an ADU. So just some thoughts on that it might require in municipalities to some kind of way to upgrade their building codes in order to be able to allow this. So we're doing it now. We actually have a couple of container homes under construction in the city of Minneapolis. But again, we basically, they handed it off to the licensed engineers to say, if you tell us it works, we'll agree to it.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. Go ahead, Ahmad.
Oh no, go ahead.
Nope, mine was just going to be a editorial comment. So go ahead.
Got it. Yeah, I was going to say that it's interesting because you see an overlap between ADU development as a housing production strategy and then other design and construction strategies, whether it's off-site construction, like prefab or modular construction or container architecture, which can also help expedite the construction process. You know, that's the one way to think about it. If it's more affordable and it could potentially expedite the construction process, you know, that's just way better for the homeowner than to deal with a long-term construction process on their parcel. That's an interesting question. I would say that, you know, each jurisdiction would have its own requirements when it comes to using new or alternative construction techniques. For example, if it's an ADU that is a modular unit that is shipped from a factory and placed on the site, there might be other requirements, and then you might need, as a homeowner, you might need to deal with multiple agencies and get approvals from multiple agencies. So I understand that this can create some confusion or complexities for the homeowners, but I guess if a jurisdiction is interested in encouraging homeowners to use such innovative construction and design strategies, they can think about ways to expedite the approval process and you know, have simpler processes for permitting the use of alternative construction and design techniques for ADU development.
That's great. And Matthew, all I was going to say is, you know, being that NCST's offices, I'm out of the office here in Minnesota, would love to keep in touch and possibly have our team do some touring. So let's definitely connect online, offline of this call.
Will do.
We do have another question, Ahmad. It says, in the subdivision proposal, have you contemplated and how do you plan to mitigate the negative long-term implications of lot subdivision for ADUs related to zoning complications, minimal parcel size that will no longer meet setback and building code requirements, impervious surface area, and consequent environmental impact, resale complications, etc.? So it sounds like there are some opportunities here for some feedback.
Right. So the short answer is no, since I'm not a city planner who's more involved with zoning. I think those are valid concerns. I've seen, as I mentioned before in the presentation, I've seen one example in Austin in specific neighborhoods where they were using the subdivision and condominium ownership structure to allow ADUs tenants to own them. So the homeowner living in the ADU, they would own the structure and the land underneath. I have not looked into those issues, and they could be valid concerns, but I haven't looked into it. And I think it really depends on the specific jurisdiction, what the jurisdiction is trying to get out of it. If this is one of the only ways to make home ownership affordable for low income households, it might be worth it. Otherwise, it might not be worth dealing with, such issues or other issues. So I'm not saying that this is a strategy that might work everywhere, but I think it's potentially worth exploring, especially in expensive markets where it could allow low-income households to tap into home ownership.
Absolutely. And any place where we can focus on that, NCST is definitely on board. Any other questions? It looks like we might have one additional question. Could you point to a successful partnership between a municipality and a developer that's delivering an affordable ADU model?
Yes. There's, I'm gonna look it up right now. It's a project in the city of Los Angeles, and we highlighted that project in our white paper. LA Mass is a nonprofit in Los Angeles that has its own initiative where it works with lower income and moderate income homeowners who are interested in creating ADUs on their parcel by offering them technical assistance and financial support. And then in return, LA Mass would ask those homeowners to rent those ADUs for a specific period of time as affordable housing, and also accept Section 8 vouchers potentially. And this initiative is a partnership between public and private stakeholders, including the city of Los Angeles and I believe also LA County. So this is one good example, and I'm also happy to drop the URL to LMS in the chat box if you're interested in taking a look at their work and their ADU initiative. That would be good, because I think it's a good example of a public and private partnership.
Fantastic. Thank you for that.
Erin,
Raquel?
Yeah, just one quick thing. And I think, you mentioned it, Ahmad, about having to be innovative, and especially when you're thinking about financing ADUs. I'd like to call on Susan Adams, if she's still with us, to talk about some of the work that Atlanta Neighborhood Development Partnership has been doing in the West Side neighborhoods of Atlanta. Susan, are you there? Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Okay, thanks for inviting me to share a little bit about what we've been doing, and thank you, Ahmad, for your presentation. ANDP, Atlanta Neighborhood Development Partnership, we are a 30-year nonprofit organization serving Metro Atlanta, and we operate a CDFI loan fund called the ANDP Loan Fund. And we had the opportunity to participate in a construction loan with our partners at the Reinvestment Fund to provide construction financing to an organization called Backyard ATL. And they offer a turnkey approach to development of ADUs. And they wanted to do a demonstration project in a neighborhood. It's referred to as South Atlanta. It's a historic community just south of downtown Atlanta. They wanted to produce 2 ADUs in this neighborhood, which is a low-income community where the average household income is below, or the average household income is about $23,000 a year. In 2018, that community adopted a new master plan that included an amendment to the zoning that allowed for increased density. And Backyard ATL approached the community development organization that serves South Atlanta, an organization called FCS, or Focused Community Strategies, about building ADU units on 2 parcels that FCS owns in South Atlanta. And so we provided the construction financing with reinvestment fund for those 2 ADUs. It's a demonstration project, but Backyard ATL hopes ultimately to scale to about 500 ADU units a year. So pretty ambitious program, but we're really excited to partner with them through their financing needs.
That's fantastic, Susan. Thanks so much for sharing that. And I know you're in a metro where home prices are, I think Atlanta's home prices have continually gone up since we've been keeping track. So
Oh, absolutely. Particularly in those communities close to downtown.
exactly. Well, thanks for sharing. I'm not sure if there are any other questions or anyone else that wants to share. I'll pass it back to Erin.
Super. And certainly you can use the raise hand feature, and I'm happy to unmute you, or else the chat or the Q&A. Well, while we're waiting to see if anyone else has questions, just a quick housekeeping item. Ahmad's presentation will be available. We will also post the link for the Moss LA project that's happening so that folks can have that post call. And Ahmad's contact information was in his presentation, and so you will be able to see that after this afternoon. With that, I think, Ahmad, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Really appreciate the great information, and also love to hear about all this innovation that's already happening around this ADU piece. So thank you so much, and thank you for this research.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed this presentation. And one last note, I just dropped a link to Enterprise's white paper on ADU development. So if anyone is interested in reading more about the research that we did in depth, feel free to click on that link and read the resource online. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Wonderful. We'll go ahead and post that link as well after the call this afternoon. With that, I'm going to turn things over to David Sanchez on our team, who is going to provide our monthly policy update. David?
Hey, everyone. Thanks, Erin. And thanks again, Ahmad, for joining us today. So I'm going to give a policy update about 3 items that are kind of top of mind here in DC. So I'm going to talk first about the current state of foreclosure moratoriums. And then I'll give a quick update on where things stand on the infrastructure bill. And then I'm going to highlight a little bit of advocacy that NCST is getting involved in related to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac's second duty to serve plans. So in terms of the state of the foreclosure moratorium, back in March of 2020, the CARES Act established a foreclosure moratorium on mortgages backed by Fannie, Freddie, FHA, and the other government agencies. Those have since been voluntarily extended by the government agencies, but they are expiring at the end of this month. And we still don't know what they will do. Hopefully there will be an announcement in the next week. But essentially, there are probably 2 likely options. The first is that the foreclosure moratoriums will not be extended. And the second one would be that they'd be extended for a short period of time. And a lot of people are talking about August 31st as the date when the federal foreclosure moratoriums would be extended to. This is all impacted, of course, by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has proposed essentially banning foreclosures on primary residences through the end of the year. However, it's extremely unlikely that that proposal would take effect before the general consensus is the beginning of September. So I think we will probably end up in one of two scenarios. One is that the federal foreclosure moratoriums will expire and there will be a small number of months when servicers can file for foreclosure. And then there would then be a ban on doing that for primary residents through the end of 2021. it's possible that the government agencies will extend up until the time when the CFPB's moratorium would take effect, which means that we wouldn't sort of have a summer filing season of foreclosures on federal backed loans across the country. So we are obviously closely monitoring this, and we'll keep all of our partners appraised what decision is made by our government agencies. The second item I wanted to touch on was the ongoing negotiations over President Biden's infrastructure proposal and counteroffers from the Republican side, as well as a bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus proposal. So the Biden administration has proposed over $2 trillion in infrastructure spending, including about $300 million focused on affordable housing. And the question that's trying to be figured out is what is the Hill actually going to pass? So the Biden administration and Republican Senate negotiators have largely cut off their negotiations. And right now there is talk about whether there will be a bipartisan bill that is smaller, potentially numbering a little bit over $1 trillion in infrastructure spending, although only about 700 billion of that would be new spending, and some of it would just be repurposed or baseline spending that Congress has already authorized. There is a number of questions about if the bipartisan proposal goes forward, how much housing will be in that proposal? And then the other main question is, will Democrats also elect to pass a second infrastructure bill that does a number or many of the things that they couldn't do on a bipartisan nature if there is a smaller, more focused, targeted bipartisan infrastructure bill? So, I think the signs on whether there'll be any housing at all in a bipartisan bill are mixed. I think the bipartisan Problem Solvers package, I think, had a little bit of money for veterans homelessness, but really didn't have the same kind of transformative investments that the Biden plan did. At the moment, there isn't any talk of the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act being part of the bipartisan proposal. However, given that there's been sponsorship from a number of prominent Republicans as well as Democrats on the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act, I do think it is a possibility that could pass on a bipartisan basis. A number of the other proposed investments in affordable housing probably would not be passed on a bipartisan basis and would have to be passed through a reconciliation package that allows it to pass the Senate with only Democratic votes. So we are, like I said, just like the foreclosure moratorium, closely monitoring this situation. And to the extent that anyone's listening, we're reminding them about the importance of investing in affordable housing and the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act and other associated proposals in the infrastructure bills. The third policy item that I wanted to highlight is we're in a period where Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac's duty to serve program there's a lot of activity going on. The enterprises have proposed their second set of 3-year plans, which detail how they plan to address 3 particular underserved housing markets over the next 3 years. So those are manufactured housing, affordable housing preservation, and rural housing, all markets that Congress in 2008 agreed were underserved and that Fannie and Freddie should have to take targeted activities to increase liquidity in these markets. So most relevant to NCST's work is within the affordable housing preservation market, there is a recognition that purchases of distressed properties can be an important affordable housing stabilization strategy. So at the moment, Fannie Mae has proposed including a number of distressed properties pilots in their plan for the 2022 to 2024 period. We are working to develop our feedback to Fannie on what it's proposed and ideas for how it could be made stronger and more impactful in the distressed properties market. Freddie Mac has not proposed any direct distressed properties related activities, which is disappointing. Although they do continue to participate in NCST's programs in terms of selling real estate, and the sale of real estate just technically isn't eligible for duty to serve credits. So that's just the way that the rule works. But NCST is working with a number of the national housing groups that pay attention to these markets to coordinate a number of different coalition comments. We're going to be delivering feedback directly to FHFA and the GSEs at a virtual listening session in July. And over the course of the year, we will see how the enterprises revise their plans and hopefully improve the ambition and scope of their initiatives to tackle these three particular underserved markets. So I will stop there. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. I'm happy to take any questions about the foreclosure moratorium, about the infrastructure bill, about duty to serve, or anything else that our partners are wondering about.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, David. I don't see any hands yet. While folks are contemplating their questions and contemplating the information that you provided, I do want to remind folks that our next scheduled meeting will be Wednesday, July 21st, where we will be presenting, David will actually be presenting our paper that is in combination with the National Fair Housing Alliance and the National Association of Realtors on protecting homeownership from the impacts of COVID-19. So we're very excited about that. Again, mark your calendars for July 21st to attend that. We will not be meeting in August, but we will then reconvene in September. So July 21st. Any additional questions, feedback from folks, anything on folks' minds that they want to bring to the larger group for questions or thoughts? When will this be available? So it will be available at some point later this afternoon on our website. We'll have all the presentations as well as a recording of this call so that you can watch that later, David. Any additional thoughts or questions this morning? Closing comments, David or Raquel?
I would just say that if we have any partners that are contemplating or are working on ADU development opportunities, if just drop us a line, let us know how things are going and the outcome of your efforts. It would be interesting to see what else is happening around that theme around the country.
Yeah, and the only thing that I would add is, so next month I'll be back presenting the conclusions from the policy agenda, from really our policy agenda about how to protect homeownership from the impacts of COVID. So it'll touch on these topics similar to the ones that I just talked about in the policy update, as well as a number of other policy items that will just have a lot of impact on the future of affordable homeownership in this country. So I look forward to discussing it with you then.
Wonderful. I think with that, I don't see any other questions. So thank you so much for your attendance today. And we look forward to talking with you next month. If you need anything in the meantime, please do feel free to reach out to any of us or your community development manager, your senior asset manager, and we're happy to help. And again, all of the information from today's call will be available later today on our website at stabilizationtrust.org. Thanks, everyone, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.